Why couples fight about real estate. There is a conversation that happens in almost every relationship at some point. It usually starts well. Someone sees a listing online and sends it to their partner. And within 24 hours, what began as excitement has turned into something that feels surprisingly personal. One person is ready to make an offer. The other has 17 more questions. One fell in love with the kitchen. The other cannot stop thinking about the commute. One sees an opportunity. The other sees a risk. And suddenly, two people who agree on almost everything cannot agree on a single house. That is not a compatibility problem. That is psychology. Research on couples, conflict, and financial decision-making has shown consistently that buying a home together is one of the most psychologically complex things two people can do. Because it does not just ask you to agree on a price or a neighborhood. It asks you to align your deepest values, your oldest fears, your most private definitions of what a good life looks like. And that is where the fighting actually starts. Today, we are going to look at 12 psychological reasons why couples fight about real estate. And I promise you that by the end of this video, you will understand that the argument was never really about the house. Let us begin. 1. 3 different attachment styles. Every person carries an invisible blueprint for how they connect with the people they love. Psychologists call it an attachment style, and it was formed before you were old enough to choose it. John Bowlby developed attachment theory to explain how children bond with caregivers. His research, expanded by Mary Ainsworth and later applied to adult relationships, showed that the attachment patterns we develop in childhood follow us directly into how we make every major decision of our adult lives, including this one. There are 3 primary adult attachment styles: secure, anxious, and avoidant. A securely attached person can hold uncertainty without being destabilized by it. They feel confident enough in the relationship to take the risk together. An anxiously attached person needs constant reassurance that the decision is right, that the relationship is solid, that everything will be okay. Their endless questions are not about the house. They are about safety. An avoidantly attached person pulls back the moment the commitment gets real. They create distance not because they do not want the house, but because closeness at that level of stakes feels genuinely threatening to their nervous system. When two people with different attachment styles sit across from each other at a kitchen table, trying to make the biggest financial decision of their lives, they are not just looking at a floor plan. They are each responding to the deepest emotional programming they carry. It sounds like this: I just feel like you are never going to be ready, or I just feel like you are rushing us into something we cannot undo. That is not stubbornness. That is each person's nervous system doing exactly what it learned to do a very long time ago. 2 very different conversations are happening. One about whether the house is right. One about whether the relationship feels safe enough to take this leap together. Only one is actually about real estate. Number 2. The money-fear clash. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky's Nobel Prize-winning prospect theory demonstrated in 1979 that human beings do not evaluate financial decisions rationally. They evaluate them emotionally. And the core finding was this: the pain of losing something is felt approximately twice as intensely as the pleasure of gaining something equivalent. Which means that when two people look at the same house, the same price, the same mortgage number, they are not having the same experience. One partner's brain is calculating opportunity. The other partner's brain is calculating exposure. One sees equity building over time. The other sees the largest single point of financial failure they have ever voluntarily created. Neither is being irrational. They are each responding to the same information through completely different emotional filters shaped by everything they have ever experienced around money. It sounds like this: we cannot afford to lose money if the market drops. We should be more conservative. Or we are never going to build anything if we are always too afraid to commit. That argument is not about the house. It is about two people with fundamentally different relationships to financial risk trying to make a shared decision at the highest possible stakes. And the research shows that without understanding each other's loss aversion, that argument will repeat itself every time a new listing appears. 2 very different conversations are happening. One about avoiding every possible financial loss. One about understanding that staying still has its own financial cost. Only one builds a future. Number 3. The perpetual problem. Dr. John Gottman spent decades studying couples in his love lab in Seattle, observing over 3,000 couples across long-term longitudinal research. One of his most important findings was this. Approximately 69% of the conflicts couples experience are what he calls perpetual problems. Disagreements that are never fully resolved because they are not rooted in a misunderstanding that can be corrected. They are rooted in fundamental differences in personality, values, or life vision. And his research showed that financial disagreements are among the most common and most persistent perpetual problems of all. Because money is never just money. It is safe. It is identity. It is power. It is love. It is everything a person was taught to believe about the world before they were old enough to question any of it. It sounds like this. We have had this same argument 100 times, and we never get anywhere. That is not a communication failure. That is two people with different core values discovering each other at the intersection of the biggest financial decision of their lives. Gottman's research also showed something deeply hopeful. The couples who navigate perpetual problems successfully are not the ones who solve them. They are the ones who learn to understand what the problem is actually about for each person. And that understanding changes everything. Two very different conversations are happening. One about resolving the disagreement once and for all. One about understanding what the disagreement is truly about for each person. Only one moves the relationship forward. Number 4. Different definitions of home. Environmental psychologist Harold Proshansky introduced the concept of place identity in the 1970s, the theory that the places we live become deeply woven into our sense of self. But what his research also revealed is something more personal than that. The concept of home itself is not universal. It is shaped by everything we experienced growing up, every home we lived in, every move we made or did not make, every feeling of safety or instability that a physical space has ever given us. One partner may have grown up in a house that was constant, warm, and full of people who stayed. For them, home means roots, permanence, a place where life accumulates. The other may have grown up in a house that felt suffocating or unstable or temporary. For them, home means something completely different. Freedom, a fresh start, a place that does not own you. When these two people go to an open house together, they are not looking at the same thing. They are each looking for the home they needed most at some point in their lives and never fully stopped needing. It sounds like this. I just want somewhere that is finally ours, somewhere we can stop moving and start living. Or I just do not want to feel locked into something that takes away our flexibility. Neither person is being unreasonable. They are each describing a need that is completely real and completely valid. Two very different conversations are happening. One about the house they are standing in, one about the home they are each still looking for. Only one leads to a decision they can both truly live with. Number 5. The preference-proof battle. Peter Wason demonstrated through his landmark research in 1960 that once a belief forms in the human mind, the brain actively seeks out evidence that confirms that belief and systematically discounts evidence that contradicts it. This is called confirmation bias, and it operates below the level of conscious awareness, which means that once one partner has decided that a fixer-upper is the right move, their brain begins collecting every article, every anecdote, and every statistic that supports that conclusion. And once the other partner has decided that a new build is the only sensible choice, their brain does the same thing in the opposite direction. They are no longer having a conversation. They are presenting closing arguments in a trial, where both of them have already decided the verdict. It sounds like this. See, this article says fixer-uppers are a money pit. I told you we should go new build, or every expert I have read says buying new means paying a premium for someone else's profit. We would be throwing money away. Neither person is lying. They have genuinely found evidence that supports their position. But they have also unconsciously ignored the mountain of evidence on the other side. And because both feel completely rational and completely informed, neither can understand why the other will not simply agree with what is so obviously true. Two very different conversations are happening. One about proving that my preferred option is objectively correct. One about genuinely exploring what is best for both of us together. Only one finds a home they both actually chose. Number 6. The family history haunt. Rachel Yehuda's groundbreaking research on epigenetic transmission in the 2000s showed something that changed how psychologists understand inherited trauma. Financial pain does not just affect the person who experienced it. It can be transmitted to the next generation through physiological and psychological pathways that operate completely below the level of conscious memory. The buyer whose parents lost everything in 2008. The first-generation immigrant whose family spent their entire lives without the security of ownership. The child who watched money destroy their parents' marriage. These people do not just carry memories. They carry a body-level response to financial risk that was shaped before they were old enough to make a single decision on their own. It sounds like this. I cannot explain it rationally, but I just cannot stop thinking about what happened to my parents. Every time we get close to making an offer, something in me just freezes. Or I grew up with nothing, and I refuse to put everything we have at risk, no matter how good the numbers look. That response is not irrational. It is inherited wisdom from a family story that taught someone very early that financial exposure leads to devastation, and it lives in the body long before it ever reaches the rational mind. Two very different conversations are happening. One about the risk that is objectively in front of them right now. One about the risk that a family carried long before either of them was born. Only one breaks the cycle. Number 7. The dream mismatch. Psychologist Philip Zimbardo introduced time perspective theory in 2008, which showed human beings orient themselves toward time in fundamentally different ways. Some people are predominantly present-focused, experiencing life as it is happening and resisting long-term commitments that feel like they trade present freedom for future security. Others are predominantly future-focused, always building toward a vision of what life could become, willing to sacrifice present comfort for long-term stability. When these two time orientations sit across from each other at an open house, they are not looking at the same property. One sees a starter home, a practical first step, something they can leave when the next chapter calls. The other sees a forever home, a place to plant roots, a decision that defines who they are becoming. It sounds like this. Why would we spend this much on something we might outgrow in 5 years? Or why would we buy something we will have to leave when what we really want is a place to stay? That is not a disagreement about square footage. That is two people who are living in different relationships with their own futures, trying to build one shared life in the same direction. Two very different conversations are happening. One about the house that makes sense for right now. One about the life they are each imagining 10 years from today. Only one vision can they build together. Number 8. The timing problem. Psychologist William Bridges documented in his landmark research on life transitions that people move through major life changes at fundamentally different internal speeds regardless of what is happening externally. A transition is not just a logistical event, it is a psychological process that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And no two people complete that process on the same timeline. One partner may have been psychologically ready to buy a home for 2 years. They have done the research, processed the fear, imagined the life, and arrived at a place of genuine readiness. The other may have just begun processing the idea. They are still in the early stage of a psychological journey that their partner finished long ago. Neither is right nor wrong. They are simply at different points in an internal process that has no shared calendar. It sounds like this. I feel like I've been waiting forever. I do not understand what you are still afraid of. Or I feel like you are not giving me any time to actually think about what this means for my life. I am not saying no. I just need more time. That gap in readiness creates enormous frustration on both sides. The ready partner interprets the slower partner's hesitation as fear or avoidance. The slower partner interprets the ready partner's urgency as pressure or disrespect. Both interpretations feel completely valid. Neither is fully accurate. Two very different conversations are happening. One about when the market is right. One about when both people have completed the internal journey that makes a shared decision possible. Only one leads to a yes. They both mean the same. Number 9. The power struggle. John Gottman's research on couples identified something that shows up with remarkable consistency in relationships navigating major financial decisions. When there is an imbalance of influence, whether it comes from income differences, personality differences, or simply different levels of knowledge about the process, One partner begins to feel invisible, and an invisible partner does not just become frustrated, they become reactive. Every suggestion feels like a directive. Every decision feels like it was made without them. Every conversation about the house starts to feel like a conversation about whether their voice matters in this relationship at all. It sounds like this. You always make the final call because it is mostly your money on the line. Or, I feel like I do all the research and make all the decisions, and you just show up and object to everything. Neither person is entirely wrong. The research on couples and financial decisions consistently shows that equal decision-making power, regardless of who earns more, is one of the strongest predictors of both relationship satisfaction and post-purchase happiness. Two very different conversations are happening. One about who has the right to make the final call. One about whether both people feel genuinely equal in the life they are building together. Only one builds a partnership that lasts beyond the closing date. Number 10. Emotional flooding. John Gottman's psychophysiological research made a discovery that changed how therapists understand couples' conflict. When a person's heart rate rises above 100 beats per minute during an argument, the brain loses access to the parts of the frontal cortex responsible for logic, empathy, and problem solving. Gottman called this emotional flooding. And what his research showed is that once a person is flooded, they are physiologically incapable of having a productive conversation. No matter how much they want to, the body has entered fight-or-flight mode. And in fight-or-flight mode, every word the other person says sounds like a threat, even when it is not. It sounds like this. Why do you always have to do this when we are in the middle of a showing? Or, I cannot talk to you about this right now because everything you say just makes me feel worse. That is not stubbornness. That is a nervous system that has hit its limit. And the research shows that continuing to argue when one or both partners are flooded does not resolve the disagreement. It deepens it. Because every harsh word said in a flooded state gets stored in the brain as evidence about what this relationship feels like under pressure. Two very different conversations are happening. One in the room right now that is going nowhere. One that could begin after 20 minutes of genuine calm that could actually change everything. Only one is possible when both people can breathe. Number 11. The unequal mental load. Research on cognitive load and relationship satisfaction has consistently shown that when one partner carries a disproportionate amount of the mental labor in a shared project, resentment accumulates faster than almost any other dynamic in a relationship. And buying a home is one of the most mentally demanding shared projects two people ever undertake. Someone has to track the listings. Someone has to research the neighborhoods. Someone has to coordinate the showings. Someone has to read the inspection reports and compare mortgage rates, follow up with the agent, and remember every detail of every house they have seen in the last 4 months. When that someone is always the same person, the dynamic becomes deeply unfair very quickly. It sounds like this. I feel like I am doing all of this completely alone and you just show up and have opinions about something you have not done any of the work to understand. Or I feel like you have made all the decisions already before I even get to see the house. By the time I get there, you have already decided, and my input does not matter. Both experiences are real. Both are the direct result of an unequal distribution of invisible labor that neither person may have consciously chosen. Two very different conversations are happening. One about the house that is on the table right now. One about whether both people feel equally respected and equally involved in building their shared life. Only one they can walk into together. Number 12. The fight is never about the house. John Gottman identified 4 communication patterns that he called the 4 horsemen. Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. His research showed that these 4 patterns are the most reliable predictors of relationship breakdown that exist. And they appear most powerfully not during everyday conflict, but during high-stakes decisions where both people feel their core needs are simultaneously threatened. A home purchase creates the perfect conditions for all 4 to appear at once. Financial pressure, time pressure, competing visions, old wounds, power dynamics, unequal labor, accumulated frustration, all of it converging on a single decision at a single moment. It sounds like this. You never actually listen to what I need. You always make me feel like my concerns are stupid or irrational. Every time we get close, you find a reason to pull back. By this point, the conversation has nothing to do with the house. It is two people telling each other everything they have been unable to say for months through the language of real estate. And the most important thing either of them could do at that moment is stop talking about the house entirely. Because the research shows that couples who can recognize when a real estate conversation has become a relationship conversation and who dare to address the relationship directly do not just find a house more easily. They find each other more clearly. Two very different conversations are happening. One about the house that neither of them can agree on. One about the relationship that both of them are actually fighting for. Only one is worth having right now.
If any of this felt familiar, you are not alone. If you found this helpful, give it a like. It helps more people find us. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. This is Real Estate on the Couch.